I should probably start with an intro that showcases anime and tea. Hello there, my friends, and welcome to the Dragon's Treasure Anime Teacast, the first one for 2020 and the first one for about 8 months. You can expect a lot more from these in the future, and I'll get into why in the next podcast. I'm not going to go into it now because it is not a happy, fun tale. It is one filled with much annoyance. So I decided let's start out with something a little bit more positive, shall we? As a lot of people may know, I've been trying to get my physical store open for quite some time. It has been a dream of mine, and 3 years ago, I went on the adventure of getting it open. If you notice, it's not open yet. So I want to get into what's going on with the store, as well as the overall journey of this entire tea shop. All the way beginning from its origins, which will be what we'll be talking about today. The origins of the Teaman and the tea store itself. We officially launched in 2015, but our story begins much before then. First, the all-important question, which came first, the anime or the tea? That's an easy one, the anime. Been watching since I was 4 years old, back in my good old home country of Bulgaria. Things which a 3-year-old, 4-year-old kid should not have been watching. Things like Vampire Hunter D, Guyver. Yeah, not exactly kid-friendly, which might explain some of my more interesting quirks. The tea did not come until much later, until around 2006. I was a junior or senior in high school, so 16 years old, maybe 17. I've lost count at this point. I've had tea before, in fact plenty of it, but just generic store-bought stuff that my mom made in the morning. Nothing too special or crazy, so I didn't really care for it. It was just flavored water, to be blunt about it. But in 2006, I had a friend named Crystal, who I've actually dedicated a tea to, we'll get into that in just a little bit, who began working at a tea shop at the local mall. I began going there specifically to visit her, not the tea itself. But as I was there, I actually tried an actual cup of tea. Genmaicha. That was the very first tea I had that sent me on my journey. I bought the cup so I can actually put some money into this and not be that guy who was just hanging around. But after that cup, my general reaction was something along the lines of, okay, I'll have this cup. Ooh, wait, what do you mean this is tea? This is not what I usually have. And from there, things just kind of took off. I wondered what else she had. What else the store offered. What were these fancy cups? Why are you actually putting effort into making this? I'm used to just throwing into hot water and just calling it a day. Different temperatures, different types. What is a green tea and what's a black tea? What do you mean they're the same leaf? Things just spiraled from there. So that's the reason our Genmaicha is called Crystal's Genmaicha. It's a dedication to her, and her helping me on this journey that has led me to where I am today. So aside from that tea shop, Gala Tea was its name. There was also another shop in Park Ridge, Illinois called Tea Lula. Fantastic place. I began going there as well in, 2008, 2009? Whenever, a few months after it opened. From there, I met the owner, Sheila. Fantastic person, and she was one of the big inspirations for me thinking about, well, why don't I open my own shop? And instead of being the more expected businesswoman of, okay, but I'm not going to tell you anything because you're competition, she showed me that in the tea community, competition is not really the same thing. We don't have any problems helping each other out. It's a community that we look to help it grow more and more because, well, I'll get into why at different podcasts, because that's a whole tale in and of itself that is going to send me on too many tangents. But she helped me out tremendously. She gave me an idea of some of the business expenses I can expect, some of the government bureaucracy that still managed to blindside me. We'll get into that into probably the next podcast talking about this. Talk to me about the quality of teas, more detailed stuff like what's a first flush Darjeeling, what's a second flush, what about the estates, etc., etc. Where can I find good distributors of tea? All of the important information. Fast forward to 2010, 2011. Some people don't actually know this. Our official launch, 2015, technically, it's an official relaunch. You see, the tea shop actually began in 2011. During this time, I had the Bender from Futurama mentality of, I'll make my own tea shop with blackjack and hookers. But no blackjack and hookers, keep it just to tea. There was no anime theme at this point, it was just tea. And it was actually called The Dragon's Treasure. This is where I got my first real hard lessons about certain things with business. Fun fact, the idea that as long as you love something, it'll take you all the way to the end? No, it will not. You can try and argue otherwise, but you will not succeed. The only way it can work is in the sense of, I love this thing so much, I'm willing to do things I hate and suffer through a lot of bullcrap just so I can have other people enjoy this, even if I can't enjoy it myself. That is the type of love that would be required. But you can't just like a product and think you can make a living off of it. It does not work that way. So I began with only 4 T's, no website, and thinking just by the force of personality of my, 22 years old? I should probably jot some of this stuff down. Somewhere around 22 years old, I'll use my youthful vigor to get those sales of people who don't even know I exist. But, lo and behold, it did not work that way. After about a year, I closed the whole thing down. Didn't really get anywhere. I would not say it was a complete loss. It showed me just how little I knew about business as a whole, a little bit of the tea industry, and showed me a lot of things I needed to improve on before I try anything again. During this time, I had ideas of what exactly I wanted to do with this shop. The physical store, I mean. There's a place where I live, a specific corner of a strip mall, that I envisioned my tea shop opening up. This was in 2011. The reason this matters will go into the next podcast when I talk about what happened with the tea shop. But just keep that in mind. 2011, looking at this specific spot. So anyway, things did not work out. I closed down. I began to hit the books a lot more, realizing, okay, if I hope to actually do something with this, I need a little bit more. Plus, I also had the naivety of thinking, I can run this entire business while working on other things I plan for it to be my entire career, my entire life path. That this business was going to be a side venture that was going to be as successful, if not more so, than somebody dedicating 80 hours a week to it. Oh, youth. So between 2012 and 2015, there was a nice bit of a lull. I had my career path that I was going to do kind of snap, to put it mildly. For those who know the story, I'll just leave it at that. For those who don't, maybe I'll talk about it at a different point, but not the main focus. And so I kind of drifted around, doing basic jobs, just making money to live. All the while in the back of my head was this tea shop idea. When I'm going to do the relaunching, how I'm going to do it, etc., etc. I got this really bad habit of waiting until something is utter perfection before actually pulling the trigger. And for business, that seems like sound advice, but it's actually terrible advice. There is a book out there whose title just says it all about the whole thing. Ready, Fire, Aim. That is the title of the book. And it is a perfect description of what is actually important to really get a business going. Certain things no book can ever explain to you. You need to experience stuff. You need to tinker around, experiment. And unless you actually get in there, you won't know what is going on. Again, why the first launch of this was just a giant, colossal failure. I kept aiming, but after I pulled the trigger, I didn't even know what I was aiming at. So fast forward, 2015, very early in 2015, I was speaking to, we'll call him one of my big advisors. And I was talking to him about my idea for a tea shop and how I wanted to wait until I had this amount of money saved up and this was going on in my life. I could get rid of these problems. And he basically told me in a much nicer way, shut up. If you keep waiting, you're going to just keep waiting. Things will never be good enough for you to actually launch this. Especially for the person I am personally, outside of the Teaman, with all the stuff I work on, all the stuff I do, it is never going to be a good time for anything. So I started talking to him about the original plans I was thinking about with me, my friends, and it was just all over the place. I wanted to do everything as well as everybody else. I was thinking of this giant worldwide tea shop where every corner of the room was going to be its own specific region. Here is where the Russian tea stuff, here's the Chinese and the Japanese, here's the Indian tea section, and all of this grand stuff that is fantastic for some 22-year-old thinking about it, thinking, as long as I have love and hope in my heart, I will succeed. Oh god, that's depressing in a hilarious way. Anyway, so aside from all of this, as so many people know, I also like anime. And one of those ideas that I originally wrote down but then just tossed in the bin was, hey, how about anime-themed tea? No, that's stupid. Who is gonna go for something like that? And so I just kind of briefly mentioned it in passing, and I tried to move on to the next subject, and my advisor said, whoa, repeat that. And we began talking about it, and my initial reaction was much like everybody else's reaction. This is a little bit too niche. I don't really see a market in this, nobody else has done it, and my advisor talked with me and poked holes in my attempt at poking holes, and so all this other stuff, and the more I talked about it, the more I thought about it, the more of a good idea it seemed. So eventually, I was on board with my own idea. Thanks, advisor. I spent a little bit more time mentally thinking, preparing, laying out how I wanted to do things, until eventually I announced it to friends and family, mostly friends. The initial reaction was a mixture of, no, that's not going to work, and no, you idiot, that's not going to work. It was not a popular idea whatsoever. But after spending some time talking about it with my advisor and thinking about how I reacted to it, I didn't even try and fight them in it or explain it. I just went, I know what you're thinking. I understand. It's going to work. Just trust me. And so I spent a few months, or actually let me back up a little bit. So at the time of launching this thing, I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with a total of 3 people, me and 2 roommates. I had a okay paying job, but I only had about $2,000 saved up. And I think at this point we recently moved in. So I was still getting settled with everything. Instead of keeping that $2,000 to save up, I put every cent of that into relaunching, opening up the website, buying the materials, everything. I had a little bit of stuff left over, mostly packages and whatnot from 2011, so I did not fund the entire thing, but 90% of it, that counts. So right from the get-go, I was a business planner's worst nightmare. I did not have much support into a market that didn't even exist, very little capital. I did not have any knowledge of how to build websites, inexperienced, just so many things, so many checkboxes ticked off for maybe you shouldn't do this, but I did it anyway. I launched with only 12 teas, and not a single bit of merchandise, just 12 teas, the website, and a wing and a prayer. Now then, one of those things I learned that I want to pass along to anybody else who might be thinking of starting up any type of business enterprise is 99% of the support you expect to get from friends and family is going to be just lip service. I know we all think our friends and family are going to come in for us and do all this nice stuff, etc., etc. I'm sorry to say, 99% will be lip service. It won't even be click service. Like, you would think that they could at least do stuff like share updates and things of that nature. Most will not. Maybe they'll give it a like on Bookface, but they don't care enough to actually help out. They are more likely to share statuses about how people should support their friends and family opening up small local businesses than actually sharing your stuff from a small and local business. I'm not saying this from a place of bitterness or hate. It's one of those things that it is what it is, and I've gone well past that. It's just something to think about. Do not rely on other people doing the work for you. You have to do the work. So, website launched. The store officially reopened August 1st, 2015. On the outside, I'm sure it seemed kind of okay, but behind the scenes, it was an absolute shit show of a mess. I'm just being as honest as I can about this. It's 4.5 years later, so I don't expect people to think that I'm the same businessman as I was then. I am working at this in between 2 other jobs. working at Whole Foods Market, and also being a personal trainer. So aside from the shop, I was doing, 50, 60 hours a week, plus working on this, working on the website in between shifts, late at night, early in the morning, all the while having no idea what the hell I was doing. It was awful. And that's one of the things which I mentioned earlier. The type of love you actually need to be able to run a business on love is I can put up with all of this awful stuff as long as I get to the end goal. So many people think, oh yeah, I'm gonna open up a tea business. That means I can just drink tea all day and get paid for it. No. No job ever works like that, ever. The satisfaction only comes after the fact. After everything is done, and you can just sit back on your couch and think about what you did and look back, then you get a feeling of satisfaction. At the moment, no, you're gonna hate most of it. I'm telling you that up front right now. Most of it, you're going to hate. I hate working on the budgets. I hate putting in the information on the website. It's all just one tired, boring drivel. But I have to do it. Now, we did not have a successful launch. The first 6 months were brutal. A few months can go by without even a single sale. That's how slow the shop was at the beginning. Really wasn't pretty. I was trying, but again, I had no idea what I was doing. But I was just tinkering, trying stuff out. Again, things that you cannot really study for, you have to go in and do. So yeah, at this point, I had more people kind of start to question, hey, was this really a good idea? Should you have gone with the anime theme? Do you really know what you're doing? You're kind of putting money into nothing. And in my mind, I was just thinking, shut up. But on the outside, I understand what you're thinking. Just my main issue, it was back then, it still is now, is proper marketing and advertising. I have never been good at that. My whole way of doing things is just try my product and we'll take it from there. That's all I can really do. And it's successful when I can do that, but most people don't really bite at that. So in comes about 3, 4, 5 months into the business, I get a message from somebody from the Houston Tea Festival asking me if I wanted to be a part of that. Now, doing festivals and conventions was on my roadmap, but that was like 2, 3, 40 years down the line of doing any type of convention. How could I possibly get things ready and do something all the way down in Texas, 800 miles away, with the knowledge and experience I have now? I did it with the good old-fashioned quote from Nike, fuck it, just do it. I might have added a word or two there, but that's the basic gist of how it went. I decided, okay, this is the next step of how we're going to do things. Let's make this happen. How? I don't know yet. We'll just experiment. So I went down there with my best friend who did this without any money. I did not pay him for this one. He was okay with that. That's sometimes how things go, and I thank him dearly for that. I paid him for the future ones, but at this one it was just a case of road trip. It was something. I did not bring just the teas I had, which at this point was, I don't know, I think we had 20 something at this point, and I brought everything. And I really mean everything. You know, what if we ran out of tea? What if I needed to make some more? What if something went wrong with, I don't know, anything? I mean, I damn near brought a printer. As I found out later on, most of the stuff I did not need to do, and so my trips got smaller and smaller and smaller of how many things I brought. But at the time, it was something else. So when I was being asked of how I was going to do samples, most people when they go to tea conventions, the tea owners, they make anywhere between 1 and 6 samples, usually 2 or 3. How did I decide to do it? All the samples, every single tea we had, we were going to make samples of it. They were going to say, can I try this tea? We would get a tea bag, get it ready, make it on the spot, and that's how we ran things. Again, that's one of those things that people advised us not to do, because it was going to be too hectic, too chaotic, we were going to be too busy for it. But, much like the start of the business, I understand your concerns, I'm doing it anyway. And thank God I did. It proved to be a huge success. We were busy around the clock. as I was told by multiple people, we were one of the busiest booths there. Probably because people got a chance to try so many samples. Our most popular tea was Sebastian's Morning Earl Grey Vanilla Cream. What's fun about this is that tea actually had a 100% sample to buy ratio for that convention. 100% of the people who tried that tea ended up buying some. We ended up selling the half full bag of tea that we were just using to make samples of, at a discount of course, because people really wanted that tea. It was one of those things where after the first night, we went back to the hotel room and just, whew, we have something. This was the first true indication that we had an idea. And this idea was going to work. And what I kept saying from the beginning, just put me in front of people and I will make this work. Well, I showed it. Just let me give people my product, let them try my tea, and things will just work out from there. I don't remember how much we made in sales, because, well, here, let me back up a little bit. So one of my original plans for this business was selling tea at a much lower price to get people hooked in. If anyone remembers the prices I had between when I began and now, you'll know they've increased substantially. And the reason is, well, there's actually multiple reasons. One of them being prices naturally go up. 2, preparing for the opening of the physical shop. And 3, I wanted to get people hooked in. One of the other reasons I began raising the prices was that I found out that some people didn't want to buy the tea because they saw the price and thought, oh, this must be bad quality stuff, so I'm not going to buy it. Ooh, that stung. Fine, you want higher prices? I'll give you higher prices, now buy my tea. That's basically what happened. So yeah, I don't remember the exact physical dollar amount of sales we had, but we were swamped. Like, I don't know how we kept up. We barely did. But it was a success and was the first indication that my idea was going to work. We gained a lot more new fans from that, a lot more followers, some consistent followers that still buy tea on a consistent basis to this day. One of them actually bought tea today, just before I began recording this. And I finally found a way to get my foot in the door. From there, we began to get a lot more sales, which is not that impressive when you consider the fact that we had, like, let's say the previous month before that, we most likely had $0 in sales. Woo, that's fantastic. But after we got our foot in the door, and people respect you a little bit more and view you as a more established business, when you can say, hey, I went to a tea convention halfway across the country. Then you seem more professional. That's one of the aspects of the just business in general that I hate but I have to do. There is an element of how you look that matters. The professionalism element, which I'm going to do a whole podcast on that, why I despise it, and why I hope to at some point break it. To give you a little bit of a preview, one of the bad things it does is it lets people who are bad at what they do look like they know what they're doing, while people who are experts in their field don't get as much attention because they don't know how to put up the bells and whistles. It's awful. So, got my foot in the door, began getting more consistent sales, and things just kind of sprang up from there. After that, we had the next tea convention, the Midwest Tea Fest. Same idea there, same progress began. We had a lot more teas at this point, and again, people loved us. I showed that the first time was not a fluke. We had something going. Got more fans, more followers, more consistent buyers. Looking at the analytics, just watching my sales just go up and up and up and up and up and up, like a wonderful mountain. I don't know if I can give the exact numbers of everything. I'm probably shouldn't and won't because I don't know what kind of legal mumbo-jumbo reasons there are, but I'm sure they're out there. But let's just say I was getting more and more pleased with the amount of money we were making and the amount of fans we were getting. With that being said, do not think that this trip has been all hunky-dory with happy-go-lucky thoughts and everything's been going swell. No. Up until that point and continuing on, it has been hell. That's not to say that I'm complaining about it. Think of it in the sense of when you're working out really intensely and you hate it. You hate the burn, you hate the exhaustion you feel. All of that stuff is just terrible. But after you're done and you get to see the results, however long down the line, it becomes all worth it. That's kind of how it is with this. It is honestly more suffering than happiness, but with the end goal, that is what I'm striving to hit. Which will be what the next podcast will be focusing on. The opening of the tea shop, why I decided to do it when I did, what happened, the good, the bad, and you will finally know all the little details, well not all of them, but as much as I feel I can actually talk about, with what happened and where we are today with that. I'm recording this part after the fact. This is the first solo podcast like this I have done, so it was a little bit awkward speaking only to myself. It might come out a little bit in my voice. But from the people, I want to know what you liked about this, what you didn't, change up the pacing, what type of topics you want to see me cover at the end, or not at the end, but in the future. Any little bit of info you can give me to make this better, let me hear it. In the meantime, check out the website at dragonstreasure.com, link down below. Facebook is the platform where we post the most often about what's going on, the deals we have, so follow us on Facebook. Instagram, Twitter, all of that fun stuff, link down below. Ooh, I should also mention, since today is Monday, we have Tea of the Week. This week is going to be Crystal Skin Matcha, since we began talking about that in the beginning. Use coupon code WEEKLYT on the website to get 10% off Crystal Skin Matcha. Obviously, this only lasts the week that this podcast comes out. Follow us so you can check out what other teas we have on sale next week. And yeah, I will see you then. Actually, wait, change it up a little bit. Next week won't be what happened with the tea shop. That'll be probably 2 weeks from now. Next week will be why I decided to launch this, a little bit on social media as a whole, and where I think a lot of stuff is going to go into the future. So stay tuned for that, and see you next week.